Fasted cardio. So let's just talk about this one thing. And I want you to consider this and then realize that it applies to all things. So, the so called science based fit pros will tell you fasted cardio doesn't work. And they cite one study, it's the same study every time, and it's on individuals who had sufficient body fat. They had a rather significant amount of body fat to lose. And so there wasn't a difference between the fasted and fed group, although if you look at the data, you realize that the fasted group actually did lose more fat than the fed group, but it wasn't statistically significant. Now, I'm considered anti-science and bro-science because instead of citing one paper, I look at multiple papers, and I look at the fact that the majority of the papers on this topic say that it is superior to do your cardio in a fasted state. So, instead of looking at just one paper, I look at multiple papers. And the other thing that I bring up here, and you can't deny this, there isn't a study on how to get from 8% to 6% body fat. You see, this should go without saying. It should be common sense. If you are 15% body fat and trying to get to 12, the strategy for that is going to be very different than the strategy it will take you to go from 8% to 6%. That should be obvious. So when you see these elite level bodybuilders, and all of them are doing fasted cardio, it's because it takes a different strategy to get down to those single digits and then lose fat when you're already at single digits. Listen, if you're at 30% body fat, it probably doesn't matter at all if you do fasted or fed cardio. The fact that you get up and go for a walk is probably sufficient. If you are already down at a paucity of body fat here, and you are shredded lean, you have striated glutes, and you're still trying to get off that last couple, little tiny bit of fat on you, it's going to take a very different strategy. You're going to have to put a more aggressive strategy in, and you're going to have to do things differently. This is no different than, let's say you weigh 150 pounds, and you want to put on 10 pounds of muscle. Sure, that's not an unreasonable thing. You could easily do that in a year. You are already Big Ramy or Nick Walker, and you want to put another 10 pounds of muscle on. It's going to take a very different strategy. If you're a complete beginner, these untrained college males, sure, you could do, 30% of your 1 rep max, and, you'll still gain muscle. Whenever you're Big Ramy, when you're Nick Walker, no, it's not going to work that way anymore. You're not going to be able to do 30% of your 1 rep max and then just do a whole bunch of reps with it. There's a reason why you see guys like Jordan Peters using huge weights. He would be using less weight if he could. If he could make progress using less weight, he would. The reason he's using such heavy weights is because he has to at this point. He's so far along in this journey that it takes a very different strategy for him to gain muscle. You're a complete beginner. You can do starting strength. I don't care if you like Marco Verteau or not. It's a basic program. It's a basic linear progression. Starting strength, okay? You're Brian Carroll and you're trying to squat over 1,300 pounds. Yeah, so Brian talked about how he only went heavy once every 10 days. Yeah, you can't do a linear progression at that point. You're too far along to just do a basic linear progression. So you can see the strategy that it takes you to go from a 100-pound squat to a 110-pound squat is different than the strategy it takes you to go from a 1,300-pound squat to a 1,308-pound squat. Okay? So similarly, it should make sense to you. This isn't just bro science. I know I'm bro science and I'm anti-science because I point out to you that the strategy to go from, say, 20% body fat to 15% body fat is a different strategy than you trying to go from 10% body fat to 6% body fat. And where does this come from? Well, this comes from experience, really. In my adult life, meaning after the age of 18, I have been everywhere from 110 pounds to 236 pounds and back down again. I have been up, I have been down. I have been up, I have been down. I've been up to 185 and then went all the way down to 135. I went all the way up to 236, went all the way back down to 160. I have run the gamut of way up and way down many times. I've been as thin as 110. I've been as heavy as 236, and that's just in my adult life. This is not, like, even in the last 10 years, so forget my whole adult life, in the last 10 years I've been everywhere from 125 pounds to 236 pounds. It takes a different strategy depending on how much body fat you have to lose. So it should go without saying, hey, there's no study on Olympia competitors trying to get down to 6% body fat. So do you think maybe these guys actually are science-based because they experimented with different things and they found which ones worked? Yeah, I know. It doesn't line up with the way you want it to because it's not a published study in some paper in some journal, okay? But the reality is that's the best we have to go on. And as I pointed out, these fit pros will cite one study. It's always the same study. And my suggestion to you is to read all of the studies. Find every study that you can on this topic and read them all. Don't just read one. Don't just buy into the one that's written by some author that you happen to like. Go read all of the papers on this topic, and then you can go ahead and make a decision on what you think is correct. And then you should also pay attention to the fact that things change. Untrained college males can gain muscle with a different strategy than guys who are already at their limit. You know, do you think Donnie Thompson could have totaled 3,000 if he was doing just basic 5x5 linear progression? No, it takes a different strategy at that point. And the same thing is, this is the point. It's like you can't use the same strategy to go from 30% body fat to 20% body fat. That strategy isn't going to work when you're already 8% body fat and you're trying to step on stage. That last little bit, just like trying to max out your strength, that last little bit of getting super cruddy, like just grainy lean, yeah, it takes a very different strategy than it does for you to lose weight whenever you're already have a sufficient level of body fat where there's plenty to lose. So there you guys have it. I know I'm bro science and I'm anti-science because I actually read all of the papers instead of just one. Oh well.